Welcome to Choose the Nickel. I'm your host, George Bailey. My co-founder and technical support is the gorgeous Christina Bailey. This podcast is about giving kids financial freedom. We're interviewing fascinating people for their insights about how children learn to be financially savvy. Our guests come from diverse, sometimes conflicting schools of thought, and we love the opportunity to learn from them. We encourage all to weigh our guests' ideas on how to help children thrive, both financially and in general. We invite you to visit our website at www.choosethenickel.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and try out the things we are learning on the podcast. Our next guest is Tara Kinney. Tara has devoted her career to problem solving and progress innovating as she managerially supported 76 companies in 8 distinct industries before the age of 40. She has been an owner, key executive, fractional manager, or strategic advisor in building business development operations for 41 owner-operated small businesses and startups. She is now CEO of Atomic Revenue, constant innovator of progress, mom of 2 energetic young girls, as well as writer and speaker on related topics. Ladies and gentlemen, Tara Kinney. Tara Kinney, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So on a managerial level, you have supported 75 companies in 8 distinct industries. Now, I assume that that's part of the work that you're doing through Atomic Revenue. Tell me a little bit about that. That's quite an accomplishment.
So a lot of that actually predates Atomic Revenue. Come to find out, I'm just a revenue production junkie. But my first experience producing revenue was when I was selling rocks door to door as a kid. I actually got in really big trouble for leaving home without permission. So I always joke around that I've known how to produce revenue since I was 2 years old.
So first of all, there are definitely worse kinds of junkies out there. Okay, so revenue selling junkies, that's pretty awesome. Tell me a little bit more about this rock experience. I mean, I saw it on your LinkedIn profile. It talks about how you were like washing gravel or something like that, selling it for nickels. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yes. So the story goes, my parents had no idea where I was, and they saw me on a neighbor's doorstep 2 blocks away. So they ran down there wondering why their 2.5-year-old was 2 blocks away talking to strangers. And they found me with a pocket full of nickels and a pocket full of gravel. Come to find out, I had washed the gravel from the driveway in the dog watering bowl and gone up and down the street selling it for a nickel a piece. And the neighbors were buying, so I just kept selling and kept getting farther away from home. So my first big time getting in trouble was probably my first realization that if you have it, someone will buy it.
So this is like a prospecting experience. I'm envisioning this child sitting over the dog bowl, sifting and whatnot, and shaking it to see if she can find bits of gold or something like that. But instead, you're getting nickels for rocks.
Exactly.
Not a bad deal. Okay, this is like, so I want to understand, what do you think was the value that your neighbors were getting out of the rocks?
I think the value to them was just getting to talk to the cute little kid from up the street. Honestly, there's no value in rocks, but I do joke around that even at 2.5 years old, I was smart enough to know that if I hadn't washed the rocks in the dog watering bowl, they'd probably only be worth a penny. So clean rocks will make a nickel.
That's terrific discernment right there. Sharp kid. I love it. Now, do you remember this at all? It sounds like you don't.
I don't, but I have a baby book full of really random memories that my parents kept. Some of them are Post-it notes. One of them says, I will walk your dog up to 5 dogs at a time for a quarter apiece. So apparently I've been an entrepreneur my whole childhood, and these pictures and these promotions of what I was going to do to earn money exist now in my baby book.
That's wonderful. Do you have a picture that you really love, whether or not it has anything to do with selling?
From my childhood?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of pictures, I guess, from my childhood that come to mind. I suppose my favorite one is me at about 1 year old feeding chickens, and there must be like 1,000 chickens around me, and I'm only twice as tall as a chicken. I'm so small. here I am out there feeding the chickens. It seriously looked like I was entertaining this crowd of thousands. I looked so serious about it. And it's just one of those innocent child pictures where clearly I was taking it too seriously.
But kids love that type of stuff, and they love feeding animals. Now, did you grow up in farm country? What was your setting?
Yeah, that was, I think, one of the key things that taught me about money most as a kid was having pets. I grew up in the mountains in Colorado, a town called Paonia. No one's really heard of it. It's the Gunnison Valley, kind of middle of nowhere mountains in Colorado. And we had tons of pets. We had horses and dogs and cats and rabbits. My aunt from Albany, New York, moved onto our property and she started buying burros. And we learned a lot about what does it cost to take care of these animals and how much time does it take to take care of these animals. And when you have responsibility, these animals' lives are in your hands. So not only does it take time and money to care for them, they depend on you. And it really instilled a much stronger sense of responsibility for my sister and I. That was our job. Our parents didn't take care of our pets. If we wanted them, that was the condition. You take care of them. And as we got older, when we wanted more pets, the condition was you have to buy everything that they need. And I actually do the same thing with my kids now. They saved their money from their birthdays, bought their own guinea pigs, and they now buy all the food, and it's their responsibility to take care of those pets that they wanted.
Is there a line? Is there a point at which your kid comes home with a pet gorilla and you say, no? I don't care if you have the money to build the large gorilla exhibit. I don't care, like, we are not bringing a gorilla in the house. Where is that line for you?
Yes, we do still have to agree on the reality of the situation. For example, we live in a condo. We've decided no dogs, and we talked to the kids about the decision why we're not having a dog. It's not really fair to the dog that they're at school all day and we're at work, and the dog cannot go outside.
Yes.
And also, it's unrealistic for us to think that the kids are going to be able to walk the dog before and after school when right now they have a hard time getting their homework done and getting all of their other responsibilities taken care of. And so we go through a family meeting process to be able to make these decisions and help them evaluate whether or not having a gorilla or a dog is actually a good idea, because they do want a dog. But once we start talking about the things they'd have to give up in order to have a dog, they rethink that choice.
Well, I look at the guiding principles there, and I think it's very interesting that you put as one of them the welfare of the animal itself. You know, get your kids to be considerate about that, because it's not just about like whether or not you can afford it, but whether or not once you can afford it, it's even good as an outcome. I think that that's a really great point.
Yep. We also want them to understand the opportunity costs. You know,
Yes,
there's a monetary
absolutely.
cost, but you also have to give up other things that you choose to do. And some of those things for us are travel. And our kids love to travel. I mean, we go on probably 10 or 12 trips a year, and we take our kids with us on every single one of them. We explain to them that we wouldn't be able to go do those things. You wouldn't be able to go to Yellowstone. You wouldn't be able to go to Washington, D.C., because you have all of these responsibilities at home, and having a dog at home is a lot different than having someone stop by once a day to feed the guinea pig.
That is a terrific point. That's actually one of the reasons why a dog for me is a little bit of a hard one. We're limited. We have a pet snake. Then when we did have mice, I'll tell you, Tara, it was a nightmare. We had mice that we bred to feed the snake, and the kids would let the mice out. And that was horrible. But that didn't keep the mice from breeding, but it just created a real disaster in our basement that we had to clean up and whatnot. And finally we resolved that. But, you know, pets are tough, but they do teach responsibility, and they teach your kids forms of consideration. Going back to the rocks, because I'm just still so curious about this, and I don't expect that you're going to remember everything about it. But this is more of a question about why we as adults entertain children when they are selling us rocks. What is that really about the human psyche that want, like, yeah, I'll buy rocks from this adorable child?
I'm not sure what it is, but I was involved in every single door-to-door selling gimmick that anyone was trying to involve kids in.
Yeah.
I did Girl Scouts, and I sold the cookies, and I sold the winter sales. Every fundraiser for school, I was always one of the top of the charts to sell the most. I think some of it is driven by the child themselves, the competitive spirit, the always wanting more. And also overcoming the fear of talking to people and overcoming the fear of being told no. I'm a rebel at heart. I have no fear of someone telling me no. As a matter of fact, when people tell me you can't, I'm more than likely going to go through in my mind all of the reasons why I could. That doesn't mean I'm going to, but I'm going to try to find the ways that I can, because there are no boundaries. And I think that's a really important lesson for kids. I mean, it makes it painful as an adult to raise these rebellious, strong-willed children. But we do grow up, and that can be harnessed in a very positive way.
Yeah.
And I try to remind myself of that now with my own strong-willed child who is 6, and she's involved in Girl Scouts. And I just remember all of these personality traits that she has right now are difficult. But when she becomes an adult, these are really powerful skills and traits that she has. The fact that she's negotiating with me and pushing my buttons, wanting to go sell Girl Scout cookies by herself because mom and dad are busy and can't take her. Not that I'm going to let her do that, by the way. I did that as a kid, but I'm not the same level of bravery as a parent.
Oh, yeah.
But I do see a lot of those same things that I now realize brought great value to my adult professional skills coming through in her, and the way that she is very strong-willed and difficult at times, but also those are the same traits that teach you to overcome challenges and persevere as an adult.
What's also interesting about what you said is you talked about how we don't like watching our children get rejected and whatnot. And yet when you reflect on your own childhood, you're like, you know what? I could take it. We kind of have to accept, like, you know what? Our kids can be sometimes really thick-skinned. Not all kids. I've seen some pretty thin-skinned kids out there, but, you know, some of them are just resilient.
I have one thin-skinned and one thick-skinned kid.
Oh, yeah.
And my more shy, reserved child doesn't want to have the conversations for herself, even with her teacher and trusted adults that she sees and works with every day. So we do have the question at home, if you ask, what is the worst that's going to happen? And when it is, they say no, then we ask, well, does that hurt you? Are you in any pain? Are you any worse off for asking and them telling you no than you were before you asked? Because the other answer is yes. And you will never be able to do that if you don't ask. You don't even have an option at yes unless you ask. So I'm not going to ask for you. You'll need to go ask for yourself. You'll need to be brave enough to know that if they say no, it doesn't hurt. You're in the same position you were today. But if they say yes, you got what you wanted. And the only path to yes is to ask.
And I've had those conversations with, you know, at least one of my kids, probably all of them at some point. I think that that's a good positive thing in parenting. At least helps prep the children kind of psychologically, help them kind of see the end from the beginning to envision the success. This is what it could feel like if you got that yes.
Yeah.
And we go through that same thing daily in sales. I mean, you and I are both engaged in sales, you as a chief executive officer for your business and me in what I do. And so we still grow up and we have to do some of those same things. Very fascinating.
Yes. I do find myself coaching my team members and training salespeople the same way that I feel like I've trained myself. You know, overcoming the fear of rejection. No is the second best answer. Maybe is the worst answer. Let's all face it. None of us want to hear maybe. It's yes is a good answer. No is second best. Let's just ask the question.
Oh, I agree.
Not feel defeated when people say no. I think that's huge. And then the other things that I coach people on is whether or not they're going to keep pushing and persevere to get the outcome that they want, or whether they're going to settle for the answer that was given to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have someone who was a nanny for my children, and she just lacked confidence in achieving the things she wanted to as a human. And now she looks back on it and she says, the things I learned from you are the things I use every day now to be successful. And one of those was I had her call to register the kids for something. And I said, they're going to push back on you because her birthday is in 2 months and they're going to say she's not old enough to register her, but just push through it. They'll approve it.
Yeah.
I was like, 2 months. So I came home from work that day and she said, well, they told me no. They said they couldn't override the system. Her birthday didn't meet the cutoff, so they didn't register her. And I said, okay, did you tell them that you were the nanny or did you tell them that you were me? She said, I said I was you like you suggested. And I said, well, does that sound like an answer that I would take? No. I was like, okay, then call them back. Because no is not the acceptable answer here. The acceptable answer is she will be that age in 2 months and I want you to register her. And so she called back the next day. So 3 times I had her call back. And the third time she got the approval in. Now she still works for me, but not as a nanny anymore. Now she's graduated from college and she's working in a business setting. And she goes back to fight my battles with vendors, with internet providers, all these things that other people would just accept no. And sometimes it's not about getting no and being okay with it. Sometimes it's about turning that no into a yes.
That is so true. And I'll tell you that what's interesting about that is the idea that when you step into somebody else's role, it can embolden you. If you understand, like, okay, what would so-and-so do? And I know that sounds so generic, we hear that, kind of what would Jesus do type of question and whatnot, but it does embolden you. And I remember having this negotiative phone call with somebody. We wanted to see this person in person and not have a phone call with them because you know how like talking with someone in person is much more effective in sales. And I was scared to make that ask, like, no, we need to see in person. And this person was like, oh, I can just do things over the phone. But I thought to myself, my business partner, if I come back to him and say, I only got a phone call conversation, is not going to be happy. And I made that extra push and I persevered. And we got an in-person meeting and it turned out to be a great meeting. Yeah. So there's something about that resilience again. Now going back to kids. Oh, that's a great story about the nanny, by the way. I love that. I really do. I think that's so great that you can coach someone that way. You sold a lot of stuff, it sounds like, as a kid. Girl Scout cookies, rocks. What was your favorite thing to sell?
Car washes.
Oh,
really? Those high school fundraisers? Because I played every sport. Yeah, I played tennis. I was a cheerleader. I played basketball. I played varsity volleyball. In every one of these sports, you did those sports fundraisers.
Oh, yeah.
The car washes were so fun. Convincing people to come get their car washed and have them tell you no, and you being able to do what we call now a challenger sale. Really? Because it looks like your car really needs to be washed.
Ouch. Oh, man, that's a line. Yeah.
So, I had a lot of fun, and car washes were fun. You got to be out there with your friends.
Oh, yeah.
Spray
Splashing
water.
each other. It's not always on the car. That is fun.
Those kinds of things were really fun. But I do think I had a really big advantage as a child. My parents didn't have a lot of money. Only my dad worked and my mom stayed home with us, and my dad was a forest ranger. We made ends meet, but not a lot of extra dollars. So we kids were taught to earn money for the things that we wanted that other parents would buy for their kids. And so we were really learning how to do chores around the house or to earn money from other people in order to have the things that we felt like our parents should buy for us. And I think that was a really important lesson. But along those same lines, my parents were trying to start an Amway business, and they couldn't pay for babysitters for us. So I probably got 100 hours of free sales training before the age of 6 as my parents were being taught how to sell Amway. And I think I just naturally absorbed it and just put that to work because they could buy childcare. So I was also in sales training.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's so good for kids to get that exposure. I love it when adults are accepting of the presence of children at these professional events. Not that you want to, abuse that, but, people don't freak out as much as I think we think they will when we bring our kids along if there's a need.
Absolutely. No, I think that was great. And then at home, my parents had us involved in doing the inventory for the Amway business at the end of the year, where you have to count the products on the shelves.
Yeah.
And they'd have us help fulfill the orders. And even at age 6, if you can read the number 1 next to this kind of soap and match that product with the items you need to put in the box. So we practiced that even at grocery shopping. Like, okay, here's the grocery list. We need 1 of this. We need 2 of that, and have the kids recognize what those items are on the shelf and putting them in. And it's the same thing as fulfilling an order in a distribution warehouse, really.
Yeah. So we talked about your favorite thing to sell, car washes. What about your least favorite thing to sell?
Wow, that's a great question. Babysitting. I did a lot of babysitting as a kid. Even at Amway meetings and hotel rooms, we'd babysit for my parents' friends' kids. But it was a tough sale. There were a lot of creepy people who would call. I remember some really creepy conversations of people who said, "We saw your ad. We tore off your name and phone number off that babysitter advertisement that you put out." Really inappropriate things that now, as I look back as an adult, I really don't want my kids to have those conversations. But for me, it was really hard to figure out if this was a good babysitting job or not. I don't think I was equipped to make that determination. And let's face it, some people's kids are not like others. And you have a lot of those dog that caught the car moments when you're selling babysitting services.
Yes. Do you have a specific memory of just a nightmare scenario? Kid does something that's just over the top.
Oh, I remember this one family I used to babysit for. They had 3 kids, and I think they practiced free-range parenting, and I was only 12 or 13 years old staying with them. But these kids would not go to bed. They ran around inside, outside, all over the place. So it was 3-on-1. Like, one would be getting food out of the cupboard and it would be all over the house, and the other one would be outside in the yard running around, and it's 9:00 at night, and I know they're supposed to be to bed, and I know the parents are coming home. The house is a disaster. The kids are in 3 different places. It was one of those families that I really didn't want to keep babysitting for. I think I babysat for them 2 or 3 times, and then I said, no matter how much you pay me, it's not worth it. I'm out.
Yep. Oh, yeah. It's funny because you're talking about the disaster. I'm like, I've had days like that with my own kids. I
agree.
I'm not getting paid for it. I shouldn't be getting paid for it, but still, there's disasters, and there are more on the horizon, I'll tell you. But that being said, you work from home. I read in one article, it said that you've been working from home since 2005. Tell me a little bit about that, and how has that been?
So I find it very productive to be able to work wherever I need to work. Lots of times people confuse working from home as I work from a home office or I work from a home kitchen table.
Yeah.
But really it's about working virtually and working wherever I feel like working.
Yes.
So I might be working at a hotel room in a different state one day. We have 5 co-working subscriptions in the St. Louis area so that my team can drop in and out of any one of them. And I'm really proud of being able to share what I learned in Boston at my first work without an office experience, which is commuting is a waste of time. And if people can be productive, let them be productive where they are. Don't force them to waste that time in their life that they can't get back and that you're not paying them for. So I maximize that to the extent possible with my team. And the other piece that I really like about virtual work is that you can take breaks whenever you want to. So if you want to go work out in the middle of the day at lunchtime and take a shower and have 2 hours in the middle of the day that you're doing not work-related things, as a virtual worker, you can do that. In an office environment, everyone would question why you were gone for 2 hours in the middle of the day, regardless of whether or not you started work at 6 a.m. or you're still working at 10 p.m. You don't have permission in an office environment to be the person who's missing for 2 hours in the middle of the day. It's culturally not acceptable.
Yes.
And in a virtual workforce, I have some folks who can only really work for 90 minutes at a time, and then they need to take a break. And all statistics show that that is the most productive way for any human to work. But they continue to work with me and in the culture that we have at Atomic Revenue, because in other office environments where you're expected to be there at 8 and until 6, and we have set office hours, you don't get to control those breaks that help you be more productive during the times that you are working. So those are some of the things I've learned since I went to my first not office job. And I really am working hard, no matter how big Atomic Revenue gets, I want to keep those same principles of not wasting people's time and not requiring you to be in a specific place to do your job, but providing you the tools to do it wherever you are. Whatever that job is, whatever needs to be done, you have the tools to do it when and where you need to.
Yes. Now, what about when parenting and work at home collide? How do you deal with that?
We work hard to make sure that we schedule phone calls to the maximum extent possible when we don't have kids at home.
Yeah.
Because you cannot help it that they jump into calls sometimes and they need you right when you're on the phone.
It's happened to me.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do have I have some single moms who work for me, and I have some new moms that have young babies at home. I want them to still be able to work, and I don't want them to have to buy childcare just because they need to take some conference calls. There's a lot of work that we can get done at home, and I worked at home with both of my kids when they were young. It's just about finding that right balance, when to schedule meetings and setting expectations properly. So when we have internal meetings, we know it's okay that your kids might jump into that Google Hangout or onto that video conference. We don't mind internally. And with clients, we have some clients that don't mind and others that do. But we set expectations very clearly that these are the times that I'm available. And if the client requests another time, we say, I am available at that time, but I will have my kids with me. So you might hear them in the background, but I'm happy to accommodate your request.
And that's a great way to distinguish, because there are some people I've talked with where it's like, I know that if my kids come screaming through, and they do, that it's not going to be a big deal. But if it's somebody where I'm like, this is I don't know what they're going to think. I'll have a client who's a Chinese attorney at a very prestigious, law firm in New York or something like that. I do not want that to go wrong. And so I have to create an atmosphere in which I've decreased the risk substantially. That's something that could go wrong. But I never want it to be something where I snap at my kids. I want them to see hey, when dad's working, he's still a happy camper. But it's a hard balance, having that virtual space.
It is, and they perceive things differently. So the kids hearing me work, I know is good for them. Hearing the way that I communicate and compromise and negotiate, they use it against me, that's for sure. But
I've seen that happen so much where they just kind of, I don't know how to express this, but they just drift towards those circumstances, not even necessarily knowing that they're manipulating the circumstance, though sometimes knowing, and really milking it for all it's worth.
It is. My youngest, when she recently turned 6, but she told me, Mom, one day I'm going to take over your business. And I said, you're going to take it over or you're going to come work with me? And she says, I'm going to take it over. You won't need to be there anymore once I come in. It's like, wow, all right, well, go 5-year-old, right? And
Yeah.
more power to you. But even today, I was doing the talk to text thing, sending a text to someone with a project that I needed them to work on, and she heard it. And she says, "Oh, I cannot wait till I can boss people around and tell them what to do." I said, "Is that what it sounded like?" I was doing the talk to text to be very productive with my time, but she totally interpreted it as someday I'm going to get to boss people around too.
I don't know, Tara, out of the mouth of babes right there on that one. So
I went back and revisited my text, and I was like, I didn't hear it that way, but clearly that was her interpretation.
Well, you're speaking to the adult, not like they're a child, but like they're an adult, and maybe she's not used to that, whatever, I want to make sure that we all understand exactly what it is that you're doing that's so awesome with Atomic Revenue, because I love the model that you've set up in terms of revenue production and exploring the science of revenue production, making sure that companies really maximize that.
This has kind of been a calling. I didn't realize I was on this path, but as soon as we figured out that there was an opportunity to align all the aspects of a business on this one particular objective, to be able to improve the process and measure whether or not it's working, it was an epiphany that my entire life, from selling rocks at age 2 until now, has led me to really being able to understand what's required to produce revenue, how to do it most efficiently, but also improving the lives of everyone who's involved, improving the customer experience with businesses, but also improving the experience of every single employee within that organization so that they experience success and value in their role trying to market or sell a product or service. So I really view it as twofold. One, it absolutely brings business value, but two, there's real human benefits involved in improving the process of revenue production. And some of these roles are really, really painful today. Think about some of the really painful sales roles that you've seen. The customer experiences you've had where clearly the company doesn't know what you're trying to accomplish in using their product or service. Or you go to that healthcare facility and the receptionist treats you like you're a cog in a wheel versus a human with a need. These are very human impact parts of what is otherwise very boring process and data operations.
Yes, that's great. My last question for you then is, having met this calling and doing really well with your business and seeing some exciting growth and new opportunities, what is your favorite charitable cause?
That's tough. I'm a real softie. I give to a lot of different places and I support a lot of different causes. I do really appreciate a lot of the causes that benefit children, especially underserved populations, largely because these same values that we're talking about in the lessons that we've learned, we're lucky to have learned them.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of parents that don't know to teach these lessons. And when you spend time mentoring youth who maybe never see their parents are at work, working multiple jobs, and they are just at home watching TV, they don't get any of these lessons. And so any of the charitable causes where people who have a lot to give can spend time, more than money, with children or youth who need their perspective, need to experience other things in life other than what they get to experience in their own house. So I like the Boys and Girls Clubs. I like any of these mentoring types of projects. A lot of them are small and grassroots in communities. They're helping with education or they're helping with childcare. Those are really great causes. But I also appreciate when people do it outside of a charitable cause and just do it out of their good heart. It just takes being involved and not writing off those problems you see all the time as someone else's problem. If you're not fixing it, it's your problem.
Yes, I absolutely, adamantly agree. I think that there's something about how when we behave as loving human beings and we are kind to those around us, that's not a nonprofit, but it's decency and it improves the world. And then as you said about time rather than money being invested in our children, I agree. That's not to say that there are not real financial needs that we can't meet. But at the same time, that's something that we can all give. It's an equalizer right there. Yeah. And if you're able to devote your time and your kindness and your good heart to someone, you're making a great impact in the world.
Well, it's a lot about that same saying that you can feed someone today, or you can teach them how to fish and they can feed their family forever.
Yeah.
And I really do feel like when you spend time with people and share these lessons, help them get to that job interview, help them figure out how to earn independence in life. These are money skills they don't get taught. They're independence and responsibility skills that they don't have any opportunity to learn. And we can share those with people. And it will improve society as a whole, but so long as we just ignore it and write it off as someone else's problem, it's going to keep persisting because generationally or regionally or in that neighborhood or in that household, these are lessons they haven't learned. So people are going to grow up to be adults who don't know how to earn independence, don't know how to spend their money wisely, and will continue to need financial support from the community to help them.
Tara Kinney, thank you so much, and thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate all of your thoughts.
Thank you for having me. This is a great topic, and I'm really glad that you are spending some time getting messaging out about financial responsibility and raising kids responsibly.
Everybody else, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the interview and found useful ideas about things you can do with your kids. Be sure to check the show notes at www.choosethenickel.com for links to names, books, and other resources we discussed in today's show. Also, please subscribe to our newsletter and visit our contact page where you can give us feedback. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube, and you can follow Choose the Nickel on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We invite you to share Choose the Nickel with your friends and join us in our quest to teach kids financial freedom.